Welcome to Haunted Horizons GhostCast with Alison Oborn, Craig Cameron and Kag Allwood from Haunted Horizons.
Well, there you go. I did that one a little bit earlier than the introduction, but let's get all serious now because this is Paranormal Tales. And tonight we are looking at past life and reincarnation. And I'd want to start with something unusual about my life as well, because I have had memories, or what seems to be memories, if you just let me do that. The memories that I have, one of them was very recent. Well, I say recent, but it was about 10 years ago. And I used to suffer from stomach pains, and especially in the esophagus, just below there, just above the stomach. And one day I was very, very sick, and it was very, very painful, and I was nearly in tears. So I got out of my bed, and suddenly I collapsed and had a flashing picture in my head. I was lying on the ground in the dirt somewhere. There was a man standing over me. He was very bedraggled, very dirty, greasy, dirty hair. He was in uniform. I knew that I was Native American. And whatever this man had done, he'd either, I don't know whether it was a bayonet type thing or a spear, but I was lying there and I had been hit here, right in the stomach. And I was looking right at him, and he was leering at me. I remember the color of his hair. I remember the dirt. Anybody who says the soldiers that were fighting the Native Americans were in their crisp blue uniforms, this was a very, very dirty person. That isn't the first time. That was my last one. I don't think I've had too much since then. I had one experience since then, but this goes right back to when I was a child. In the 60s, when I was born and growing up, I used to play like a lot of children did, cowboys and Indians, as we called it back then. The thing is, most of the shows back then, most of the movies back then, the Native Americans were depicted as bad people, that they were the ones that you had to fear because the cowboys were always being attacked by them. They were always having to defend themselves, turn the wagons around like that. So you've got to remember that in my day, it was never a wonderful thing to play the part of the Indian, if you like. And yet somewhere as a child, I knew that wasn't true. And I would always have the Indian role. I always wanted to be the Indian. I used to spend hours and hours on my own, just crafting spears and bows and arrows out of anything I could find, and just spending hours playing with it, beading, things like that. It was the most bizarre thing. I also knew how to ride horses. I was born in the city. I never touched a horse in my life, yet I knew what a horse bone structure and feel of a horse was. And I actually conned my way into a riding school as my first kind of teen, well, actually I was probably about 14 job. And they asked, can you ride? And I lied. I said, yes, I can ride. I've ridden a lot. I'd never touched a horse. I'd never been on a horse before that. So they tested me without telling me, and they gave me the hardest horse. I still remember his name, Squire, because it's a horse, they told me later, that is very, very difficult to ride, and actually tested people who wanted to come and work and help out with the horses. And I knew how to do it. I knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly, which was bizarre. In fact, my riding skills have got worse as I've got older. So it's like that's kind of been forgotten. It's deteriorated over time. So plenty of other stories. One last one for you. And we'll talk about it soon. I'm going to bring Craig and Kag on in a minute. I did go and do some meditation once. I was in a meditation group. And I did have a co-founder, I will say. And there was him, there was me, and for my paranormal team. And another one of my team members. and we were doing this meditation circle. And suddenly, and I'm terrible at meditation, suddenly I, boom, was on the top of a rise on a horse. And there was other people with me on the horses as well. It was the most weirdest thing. And I was looking down at a homestead. And I knew I was Native American again. And I was looking at a homestead, one of those little, like you would see on Little House on the Prairie, I guess, one of those little homesteads. And I could see the man, the wife, and there was a small girl, probably about 12 years old. And I remember all the feelings of, we came over the rise and went galloping down with the intention of killing them. And I remember the feeling of having no feeling on that. It was just like, that's what we did, and that's what we were going to do. And I remember a dog running out at us. Or I saw, a dog running out, and we killed the dog first. And then we killed the adults, and then we had no compunction about killing the child either. It was bizarre. It was bizarre. So was it a past life? Was it something explainable? Was it just a memory? I don't know. So I'm going to bring Kag and Craig on, and we're going to talk about reincarnation, past lives, and look at some natural explanations as well. So Craig's probably shaking his head now because he doesn't know this. He's never heard this one. So I'm going to unmute. I'm going to bring them on, and we're going to talk past lives. So there you go. Most of you don't know that. You do now.
What do you think about that?
Well, what do you think about it, Craig?
I want Kag's opinion first.
Okay.
I want Kag's opinion first.
Oh, I've heard it before, Craig.
Oh,
yeah, I've heard it before, Craig. So
I mean, it's reincarnation comes from the Latin term, doesn't it? Entering the flesh again is what it stands for. I mean, do you two believe in that, or do you have any memories or anything like that? What do you think?
I have no memories whatsoever. I've heard of it, and I've read no end of articles about it, but it's very difficult to take it on board when you've got no experiences yourself. You listen to people that you trust, like yourself, and you think, okay, that's interesting. But to me, I don't know. I don't know what I think about it. It's very strange. Craig.
So what do you think with Alison describing her experience, and the emotion is pretty raw in there as well? It's like she's remembering something that happened yesterday. And I think when you have one of those experiences, it's like you can relate to it and you don't lose any details of the original incident. So what do you think is going on in Alison's case? Like, we know she's crazy, but if you take that out of the equation, what else is going on? Why is she remembering something so vivid if it never happened?
I know. Well, that's a strange thing, because I know she's drawn to certain parts of America. I mean, she loves America. Yeah. Certain parts of America where that sort of thing would have gone off. Very into. You should see her if there's somebody dressed up as an Indian. Far out. Very strange indeed. Native Indian. Native Americans. Yeah, she's just.
Native Indian.
Native American. Yeah, you see. Sorry, yeah, Native American. It's very, yeah. I don't. There's going to be something in it, surely, because she is almost obsessive when it comes to that.
Well, I'm not as much as I was. As I said, it seems to have abated as I've got older, and since I've had kids. Now, this is the other interesting thing. Since I've had kids, it's really, I haven't had as much now. It was leading up to kids. I remember going down Main North Road. I used to listen to Native American music, more the modern stuff that they do for soundtracks and stuff. And I had a cassette, because we had cassettes in those days. And I was driving down Main North Road, put the cassette in. I think it's How the West Was Lost or something like that. And I had that soundtrack, and it was all very nice. I was listening to it and enjoying it. And then one track came on, and I just had to pull over and burst out crying. and just had an overwhelming feel of, I want to go home. As in, not this home. I wanted to go to America. And that's before I ever went to America, by the way. And it was just, I want to go home. And it was really bizarre. And when I looked back on the tracks that was playing, it turns out that was the only original Native American song on the track. The rest were all kind of composed by modern day composers. So, I mean, the overwhelming emotion out of one track that was the original, and I wouldn't know it was original because they all sounded fairly similar, and it was just bang. I had to pull over and cry. Don't know. And it's not the tacky stuff. It's not if I see anything tacky to do with Native Americans, like the blue, it's like, oh. It was almost like I knew that wasn't real. That wasn't the stuff that really was. It's all commercialized. It's just weird. I don't know. You tell me. I'm open to suggestions on that.
So do you think you've sort of lost that now because your focus is now more on being a mum? You've got that's where your focus is lying.
It did. I haven't really had anything like that. The last one, I lied. The kids were young when I had that. I was quite ill for a while. I had major headaches, and it was making me ill as well. And that's when I would have had that collapsing down and just feeling like I was lying in dirt and looking at the guy above me. And it was so brief. It was so brief. It wasn't even a long look. It was like, poof, there it was, boom, gone again. But it was so real. And I could see every detail of this man. I don't know. And, the romanticism of the American soldiers, the cavalry, in the little blue. We were always brought up with the movies where they were in those pristine blue uniforms with their hats, and they were always very clean. It was like, it was far from what I saw. It was dirty, bedraggled, horrible, looked like yeah. So there you go. I don't know. Let's talk reincarnation.
Come on, Craig. What do you think?
Craig, you're sitting there going, "Oh my God, I didn't know I was working for a complete." Well, you did.
I know. I have heard that story before from you, though. I've heard that.
Not all of it.
No, I've heard snippets of it, though.
Yeah.
Definitely heard that story.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever told you about the meditation. Because I can't meditate. Nobody's ever been able to get me under hypnosis. If anybody out there is good at hypnosis, I will be a challenge to you, because nobody has ever got me in hypnosis. And I'd love to kind of explore it further, but who knows?
Ooh.
So there you go, the secret life of Alison, the other half. Nobody knows that.
The brain is very powerful with putting images in there, because we see and we interpret in pictures. So, how we interpret the pictures need to be something that we're familiar with. You don't really see a picture in your brain and go, what the hell is that? You usually try to interpret that around concepts that you know. So it's how your brain will work and how your brain processes things, but how it gets some of those images and some of that information in there in the first place, which is the real thing that interests me. I mean, I love the topic of reincarnation, past lives, near-death experiences. It's all part of the greater ghost phenomenon, afterlife phenomenon, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's what the ghosty thing is all about. That's just a manifestation of the other side as we're going through. So what we're talking about is, do we have a soul, and does that soul move on when we die and then come back? So
well, a lot of cultures actually believe that. I mean, I know everybody kind of associates it with Buddhism and Hinduism, because the Indian cultures, but it actually goes back. Apparently the Romans actually commented about the Gauls, and the Celts actually had a similar belief that you could come back again into another body. So it's not just, we always sort of assume it's Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, but it actually does go through other cultures as well. So
most religions have some sort of basic premise that you do reincarnate. Whether we reincarnate as a human or reincarnate on the other side, which one's it going to be? Because if we move, our soul moves from us to a heaven or whatever is over there, then we have got the next step. The soul does survive. And then the question becomes, do we come back into another human being or an animal or whatever you want to take it to? So, I think we do. I think my personal belief is we do have a soul, and our soul does move around. And there's a lot of a lot of stories around that. There's a lot of information, and certainly most people in the world believe that's the case. So it might not be true, but I think that for me, it's like if your soul doesn't move somewhere after you die, what's the point? Is there a point in us being in the first place?
But is that us trying to reassure ourselves? So, you say, well, what is the point if the soul doesn't exist? But is that just us trying to reassure ourselves? Because if it doesn't exist, what's the point of existing if we can't go, you know what I mean? It's like, is it just us? We're too aware of ourselves. And to think that we just stop and we don't exist anymore is just not helpable to us to believe that. So,
yeah, it's hard for us to warm to that concept that this is it. And I think that we give ourselves something to hang on to the other side. But like most religions disagree on so many different things. One thing they seem to agree on is when we leave our earthly body, we go somewhere else. So that's one real strong theme that's common across most religions. And even weird religions, some of those which are minorities, still believe in the same thing. So where's this rooted in? Where do you get that information in the first place? Like if we're assuming there's a God or whatever the deity is up there, is that deity setting the rule? And if that's the case, why are we coming back? At whose bequest? Like, do you say you want to come back and reincarnate, or is this what God's doing to us? Is he making us come back?
Well, a lot of cultures believe that you come back to learn until you can reach that higher state, that you come back.
Yeah,
it gives you an experience to move on. But hey, I don't know. I'd love to know. I'd love to know if what I experienced was just something in the brain, a mental kind of glitch, or whether it's real and whether it is a continuation of life in another body.
There are some really weird things which doesn't. Sorry, Kag, it just doesn't make sense to me. When you deal with the Hindus, they go through the caste system where you go through the 7 steps and you eventually come back as the ultimate being, which is a cow. Now, to me, that doesn't sound quite right. I'm not too sure I like that concept whatsoever. But yeah, if you
get you, Kag.
There's got to be common sense check to a lot of things that you do, and I just don't think when you talk about that specific religion, which are the Hindus, whether that's it just doesn't make sense to me. I think there's if you reincarnate, you got to reincarnate for a reason. I don't think it's going to be a random thing. There's got to be some sort of reason to do so, because there's a reason to everything in the universe. And I think that when you're picking up impressions by the stories that you're telling about your experiences, yeah, you're probably picking up those little echoes of what your soul has been in previous lives. I actually think we reincarnate. I think there's a really compelling argument for us reincarnate. And there's a less of an argument for ghosts existing than reincarnation, I reckon. And I've done a lot of reading and studying on the subject, and I just think it's amazing. So many people have the stories exactly like Alison has discussed, and you sit back there and you go, well, where do they come from? I mean, you can have 1,000 people look at it and go, what a load of rubbish. That's just coming out of your head. You're having a dream. But the experience is real. And I know that sometimes when I've been over in England, the feeling of leaving England, it's so powerfully upsetting for me because I just feel so drawn to certain areas of central England. And I'm thinking to myself, why the hell? Because it's great going there, but I don't feel like, it's the place I should live or anything like that. I really don't feel like that at all. But I feel like there's some sort of calling or drawing to a specific spot. And I don't know what that is. I don't know where that comes from. Maybe it is a previous life.
So what do you think about the other theory of genetic memory, that our actual DNA can hold some sort of memory from where we come from and our generations? So obviously Cameron, which is your surname, is going to come from the Scottish region, obviously England, things like that. All right. So what do you think? Could it be that somewhere in your genetics, that's where you belong? That's where you're drawn to, and leaving it would be very difficult.
I think what you need to separate is the body and the spirit. As soon as you started talking about genetics, you're talking about the body. So your genetics are coming from the environment, and they're made up from cells in your bodies, and the protein going into the cells. That's a function of us and our environment. Our soul, our spirit, our essence is something that's completely separate. So if you're getting an echo like that, I don't think it's a genetic memory. I think you can put a blueprint on a gene, and we can probably still do that now, and we can probably go in there and create those type of things as well. Our science is getting pretty good with that type of thing. But I don't know if it's not a. I think we're told is when we reincarnate, it's our decision or someone else's. I think we get to the point where once we get here, we're told we can't remember, because if we remember everything else, that means everything we're down here for is irrelevant. What do we come back here for? As soon as we're told you got to come back here and learn how to, I don't know, be a good person or whatever it might be. You know, if we remember in our previous life there was some bad stuff that we did, and we have to come back and learn this lesson, you know, we're going to go, well, we reincarnate. So next time we'll be a good person then. Why don't we this time we go out and rape and pillage? And I think that one of the reasons why you have to wipe your memory and you start from scratch is you can't have any of that prior information. It's going to sour what you do down here. So if we've come down for a specific purpose, for a lesson to be learned, that's why we've got to not know what our previous life was. So that's how I think the whole thing works, is yes, we probably got to say I'm coming back here, and that gives us those, I don't know if you can erode everything that's inside the soul. I think the soul is just like a powerful little engine inside you. And, you know, as much as people can say you're going to forget from age 0 out to age 97 or whatever it might be, you're going to completely forget that. But can we really do that? I don't know. So I think we come back. Look, but there's 1,000 arguments against the whole thing, right? But it makes more sense. It makes more sense for there to be a pattern to the universe. And if we're part of that universe, I don't think that when we go, we go. Like, if that's the case, what are we doing going out doing ghost hunts? I think for all of us, there's something else there, and it's got enough, it's convinced us enough to make us chase what that information is. And that's why I find the stories so compelling, so interesting. They're coming from people, number one, I trust. Number two, people that don't bullshit. And I think that's the thing to take away from it. It's a genuine, real experience for a person. And Alison's story is, you know, it's mind-boggling to me to sit there and listen to someone that I admire say something like that, because it's genuinely upsetting to hear.
Oh my God, Kag, did you take note? It's now.
Just scrolling that bit out.
You have a lot of witnesses. Right, said it. Somebody I admire.
If I ask Alison what I just said, the only thing she'll come up with is that one line.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, it doesn't matter about the rest of the time.
I was going to say, out of this whole episode, that's the bit that's going to burn now into my brain and be remembered. And I will bring that up over and over again, Craig. Don't you worry. It'll be there for well and truly. Oh, look, Abby says, look, Craig. And by the way, guys, hello to everybody who's come on. Sorry we haven't been saying hello individually, but obviously we don't want to keep interrupting. We are going to come to you, though, and answer some of your questions or thoughts or share some of your comments. Stay with us until we get this little bit out of the way, and then we'll start to banter with you lot as well. So thank you for coming on, and thank you for taking an interest in this. There's another thing, though. Cryptomnesia. I think you probably know how to pronounce that. Cryptomnesia. Is that how you pronounce it?
Close enough.
Close enough. I knew I'd get it wrong. Um,
Yeah.
this is where we have our memories and we don't realize they are memories. So you have this thought, you think it's a brand new thought, it's a brand new feeling, it's a brand new memory, but it's not. It's a memory that you've got from the past. You just forgot that you knew it. So like if you were reading a book when you were, say, 10 years old, and now you're 50 years old, and suddenly you have this thought, you have something, or you have this memory, but it actually came from the book, or you watched a movie when you were young, and suddenly you just remember this place, and you think it's a new memory, past life, something like that. What do you think of that, guys? Could that be a possibility?
Okay.
Well, it could be, unless you were a toddler and didn't have that capability, that sort of memory.
But what if parents have talked about things, and kids hear more than what we think they do? And I'm playing devil's advocate here because here's the one that had the experience. So, but I want to look at both sides tonight, and then we're going to get into the other side as well. So
Yeah.
It could be. Maybe I watched a movie when I was a kid. Maybe that's stuck in my head. I don't know.
Maybe you could have.
The only
Maybe
difference
you
is
could have, but
from the 60s were different to the movies, to what I saw.
yeah. But that doesn't make up. That doesn't for the children, the little toddlers that have talked about a life that they'd had. How does that's not possible, is it? Because they won't have that. I've done research of a 2-year-old that talked about a past life. And not only was he, well, he was. I'm just gonna. This is from America. This little boy called Luke. From 2 years old, he was very, very fussy about safety. Whether it was crossing the road, whether it was having a cup of coffee, he was obsessed with safety. He also got very fascinated with the name Pam, and he said that he was an African-American lady in his past life, that she had died in a fire. She'd gone to heaven and then came back as the boy that he was today. That she lived in Chicago. She caught the train a lot. She walked a lot. So the family did some research, and they actually researched in Chicago. There was a fire in 1993 in a hotel. A lady called Pam, I'm not going to go into her surname. She was 30. She actually plunged to her death from this fire. They managed to get a photo of this lady. They put it in the middle of all these other different photos, very similar looking people. And he picked it out straight away and said, "That's me."
Cool.
So how could he do that? That's what I found fascinating.
So detailed as well. It's yeah. What do you think, Craig? Has your kids ever said anything, Craig, when they were younger, or Kag? Because we've all got kids. Mine did.
I asked one a couple of times. I didn't get anything out of them.
Yeah.
I sometimes just randomly. Well, you randomly ask questions like, "What's your first memory? What's the early thing? Do you remember being an adult?" Some of those questions, and see what sort of response you get.
You might have. I didn't.
No, it's not normal to do that, Craig. You do realise it's not something we think about doing.
Well, you should, because you never know what response you're going to get, and the kids are going to know that you're talking about reincarnation or previous lives, but because they don't understand the concept. So any of those questions could be something that they, just think is a fun cartoon type subject. But this is a couple of years ago. My kids are 11 and 9, so can't ask them now. They'll ask why. I think I'm crazy.
Actually, I've just noticed K. Michael saying I've always been skeptical at how much parents embellish and direct these sort of things. I think the most famous case that's out there, I don't know, have you seen the movie and read the book, Bridie Murphy? Searching for Bridie Murphy. It was a big sensation. I knew the movie was around. It was an American lady who, she was under hypnosis. A friend of the family was doing hypnosis, and she came out with this Irish woman that she was coming. Bridie Murphy was the Irish lady in the 1700s, and she was giving all this information and stuff like that. And of course, the book was written, the movie was made, but nobody checked up on her information. And when they did, they couldn't find any substantial stuff for it. But they did find out that her parents, when she was young, she was raised by an uncle and his wife, but originally she was obviously for the first few years with her parents. They were of Irish background. So it does, I agree with Kay Michael, could it be that in some cases, not all cases, that kids somehow pick up and hear information and they don't remember it, but when they're older start regurgitating it like new memories. So it's just an interesting, I'm looking at both sides of this, I think, not just the spiritual, I guess, side. So, but that was the most famous case, In Search of Bridie Murphy. But it doesn't say why the parents, like Kag's case, why would the parents talk about this Pam and have so much detail that the kid remembers it and then, yeah, comes up with stuff? I don't know. I do sit on the fence. I don't know. I know from my own experiences, but I don't know. I really don't know. My own kids, I was going to talk, I remember my daughter, and unlike you, Craig, all right, I didn't have this thought of pumping my kids to see if they had a past life. It never even occurred to me. Right? So she's sitting on my knee one day. My husband remembers it as well. Michael remembers it. And she just came out with, you know what? She said, I really want to go back to my black home. And it's like, what do you mean a black home? And she was talking about a totally different home. And it's just like, all right then. And I didn't want to influence her. I didn't want to shoot her down. I just let her talk about it. Cameron, my son, my friend was trying to teach him to ride, so put him on one of our horses for the first time. And he immediately picked up the reins before she'd shown him. But he picked up the reins in a very unusual way, because you would only pick up the reins that way if you were using a double bridle, which if you ride horses, you know what I mean. And yes, I've got horses, but I don't ever ride with double bridles or the way that the reins are held. But he seemed to know immediately how to pick them up. Never been shown. Now, if you talk to them, they'll just go, nah. They grew out of it. So I don't know. Maybe snippets, kids. I don't know. So what other cases have you found? Well, I wouldn't even know how to ride with a double bridle, really. I never ever single rein for me all the way. So what other cases? Any other cases?
Sorry, Craig was going to talk then.
Talk, Craig.
I was just going to say that what you're distinguishing between is the emotional ability of a spirit against the mechanical ability of a body. So if you think about your ability to ride a horse, or your ability to play chess, or your ability to do something else, if you haven't learned that, you've got it from somewhere else. That's something your soul or your essence has picked up over time, and that could be an echo from the previous life. And I think that holds more weight than, there's a lot of stories around that you get a mark on your body, birthmark, those type of things, and it's typically an entry point or an exit point of how you died in a previous life. And in some cases, there's been some very weird, times when that's happened, where they've been able to verify certain things about it. But the verification process is pretty hokey at best too. You're dealing with one person who's got a vested interest in making sure this stuff is proved, and you can write a book on it. So there's a lot of skepticism around the quality of the evidence out there as well. I always, again, go back to if you pick up this weird ability, you don't know where the weird ability comes from, then all of a sudden you go to a past life regressionist and they tell you, oh my goodness, you used to be in the infantry, and you got stabbed by a spear or whatever it might be, and you go, well, that makes sense. And to you, that makes sense as well. That probably hit the nail on the head with that. You might not have been in the infantry, but you might have fallen off a horse and impaled yourself on a rock or something. So you might have actually inadvertently come across the linkage between the two. But I don't know why that would manifest in your physical body. It should be something that's up here inside your head, the way you think, the type of person you are. But that throws up the question, is, are you the same person or the same type of person you were 100 years ago in a previous life? Probably not. You need to learn another lesson. There's one fundamental thing that I have an issue with this reincarnation thing. And that is, let's say over the last 1,000 years, I've wanted to reincarnate. So as soon as someone takes me out, get run over by a bus, I want to get back in there and, you know, finish off what I'm meant to be finishing off. So after those 10 reincarnations, let's say you come out with your ghost box and you say, hey, Craig, you're still there. Well, which of my incarnations are you talking to? You're talking to me? You're talking to my, you know, when I used to be an Egyptian princess? Which one are you talking to? And do I go by the name of Craig or Princess Craig, or what is it?
I'm going to see Craig now as an Egyptian princess forevermore.
Pharaoh Craig.
Who inspires me? Yes.
Yeah.
He didn't say that about you, Kag. Did you notice?
No, it doesn't. Anyway, he just calls me the coup. I tell you what's interesting that what I always found fascinating is when people have children, the amount of people say, "Oh, this one's an old soul." As though, you know, they've. Sorry.
I thought my son was as well. My son, at the age of, oh gosh, I used to, you know, I'm a terrible mother. It's like if you're with your kids all day, you just need to go out and I used to take him out for coffee and used to take him down to the local Coles because he used to have a coffee place in those days in Coles, and he would be eyeing it. It was so embarrassing because I get some young lady coming out, oh, he's so cute. He used to have curly blonde hair, and Cameron's going to kill me for this. But he would have been under 2 years old. All right. And they come up and say, hi, like this. And he'd just look them up and down, especially the young, good looking ones. Now, maybe that's a genetic thing with males. And I don't like to be sexist here, but he would actually look at it. Honestly, if I had said he was anybody in his past life, I would have said Casanova. I could just imagine him jumping out windows and avoiding. He's changed now. He grew up and it all disappeared. But yeah, it was weird watching him. My friends used to kill themselves laughing watching him. He just seemed to know these things that we all said he was probably Casanova. With other people's wives. So.
Yeah. Craig, you've got a good story about children in past lives.
Yeah, it's one I spoke about at Zedward last year when I was giving that talk on children and the occult. I think it's worth just bringing that up again because I'm not sure whether many of our members have been or were there that night. But I think it's one of the ones which give me a lot more reason to think about reincarnation and the quality of the evidence that's available for them. Just to digress, I think Kay Michael has mentioned Carl Jung in there as well. Carl Jung's a pretty interesting character because whilst he did a lot of good stuff, he also believed in a thing called the collective consciousness, which is when we get to the other side, all our consciousnesses are sort of melded together. That sort of runs completely contrary to the whole I'm an individual soul sort of thing. So there's a lot of things about what old Carl came up with, which probably isn't quite consistent with a lot of the way things or people think these days on the subject. So I like reading about his stuff. It's actually pretty cool. But with him, there's a lot of taking it with a grain of salt when you start talking about these concepts. Because I don't know if any of philosophers or psychologists or anything like that can get into this side of it, because we're dealing with something that's outside of psychology. If you talk about ghosts, you're dealing with something that's outside the physical realm. It's like talking about what happened before the Big Bang. Nothing happened before the Big Bang because there was nothing there. It just didn't exist. So there's a lot of conundrums when you start talking about these sort of things. So when you apply our current science to some of these concepts, ain't going to give you any answers. Yeah, it can say that didn't exist, that's just plain stupid. But it doesn't have the scope to be able to discuss it correctly. And I think that's the thing to think of. you've got to look at it from a different angle. And when you start talking and overlaying things like genetics on reincarnation, you ain't going to get the right answer. You ain't going to come up with it, I don't think. You've got to look at it from a different angle. Let me have a look.
Well, that goes against, because I mean, I did, going to genetics and that genetic memory and whatnot, is I do have a grandfather who went to America, a great-grandfather. And there is actually a town named after him in America. Gadsden is a town, and there is actually the Gadsden's Mile as well. He was an Indian fighter, as they were called back then. All right, so you think, well, but he wouldn't have had any real influence on the Native American side of it because he wasn't Native American. So therefore, his genetic code would be different to what to my experiences or memories, because he would be the white side, the colony side. All right, he wouldn't be from Native American. So why do I remember the Native American side of it? So therefore, the genetic, you can't say that would be like DNA genetic code.
Yeah, look, I don't think it's encoded in our genes. I don't think that's the way our spiritualism works and our ability to recall it. I mean, if we have a soul, and that soul is the essence of who we are and our complete being, everything, the be all and end all of what we are as individuals, you know, I don't think that's encoded in our genes. If it is, we're going to find that out in the next 20 years, I'd say. The way we're getting into that side of it. And, you know, I for one, would think that would be tragic if that was the case. We found that out and we could manipulate that. You know, that would be, it's horrible the way it is now with genetics. But, you know, if we got into our soul and could change our spiritualism and our way we looked at things, I think that would be really bad. The case that we were talking about the kids, the one that I was talking about last year, it concerns a 2-year-old by the name of James Leininger. James Leininger, obviously being a 2-year-old, wasn't really doing too much, but he was living in Louisiana in the United States. When he was over there, he started doing some really weird things. He got given some little toy planes for his birthday. And the first thing he did with those toy planes is he picked them up and he started to get them and fly them around like all kids do, but then he would smash it into the coffee table. And as he smashed it into the coffee table, he would yell things like, "Airplane crash on fire, airplane crash on fire, little man can't get out." And he'd do that all the time. And, you know, most parents wouldn't worry too much about that. But soon after he started to do that, he started to develop night terrors. And his nightmares used to be so severe that he had to go and get some help for them. So he used to scream, blood-curdling, you know, terror screams. They used to be awful for his parents. And when people babysat, it was like someone's murdering him. And when they went in to check on him, he'd be all arms and legs up in the air, screaming and hitting or kicking something above him as if he's trying to escape from somewhere. He got 3 G.I. Joes, and the 3 little G.I. Joes are like little army soldier things, little toys. And he got 3 of them, and they were his best friends. He used to speak to them, talk to them. And their names were Leon, Walter, and Billy. And they all looked different as well. They weren't exactly the same soldier. And so his parents one day became a little bit curious about what this was all about. And they realized by talking to him, his nightmare started to subside and he wasn't having such a bad drama about it. But then he started to say things about airplanes actually crashing, being shot down by the Japanese, very specific things. And when his parents pressed him and asked him a bit more about it, he'd come up with weird words. And one of the words was Natoma. And the word Natoma was something like, you know, that's really weird word to come up. What does it mean? And they thought it was Native American type word. But when they had a look at it, they saw that it was the name of a aircraft carrier in the Second World War. And then he started talking about things like James. James is in the plane. Now, the kid's name is James. But what he was actually saying was there's another fellow by the name of James who was in the plane when it crashed. As they continued to look in it, they got enough information from him to find another person who he said, my best mate's name was Jack Larson. And so what the parents did is they had a look in through all the naval histories for the time of World War II and came across a case in Iwo Jima, which is in the Pacific, where during a dogfight in 1945, there was a pilot by 21 years old by the name of James Houston, who was shot down. And as he came down, he went flying down, he got shot, went down into the water, and his whole plane went down underneath. So he actually survived the crash and went under. And of course, what happens when you're in that sort of situation, you're down, you're in the cockpit, you're trying to push the top of the cockpit away so you can swim up, but obviously he didn't make it. James Houston was killed in a dogfight back in 1945. What's really weird about the case is it seems like James Leininger has picked up not only that the soul of James Houston, but the tiny nuances about it were just so compelling. One of the ones was where he was shot. We were talking about he was shot in the front, in the nose of the plane where the soul propeller was. Most of the people, especially a 2 or 3 year old, ain't going to know all the characteristics of the Corsairs or the planes that he was flying back in those days. He identified someone, I don't know what his name was now, but who was actually there as well on the boat because he was about 90 years old, and young James had gone back to a reunion for the Natoma Bay and had met this guy. And the guy came up to him and said, "Do you know who I am?" And little James said, "Yeah, you're Walter," or whatever his name is. And he goes, "How do you know that? You've never met me." And so the little kid had a perfect memory of this one bloke. But then it's the 3 G.I. Joes, which really get my interest up because he named them, right? And when his parents asked him, "Why have you named them such silly names like Leon and Walter? I mean, you could have called them anything, right?" And he goes, "Well, they were with me on the boat." And it was like the parents had to go and have a look and try to find out who these 3 people were. And then they found out that just prior to James Houston being shot down, he served with 3 people who all got killed on the boat before he did. And when his parents said to him, "Look, what's the significance of these 3?" He said, "Well, they're the 3 that met me at heaven." So it was really, really interesting. All the details of it were so very specific. And they were coming from a kid. And yeah, the kid could have watched TV shows. He could have listened to his parents talk about stuff. But the parents were, devout Christians in the south of the United States. They knew nothing about planes, knew nothing about the army, yet this 2-year-old was coming out with all this terminology and all this information about people who were on the USS Natoma Bay 60 years prior. This case was in 2002, by the way. So it's still relatively recent. And, a lot of the information the parents got was all coded, date stamped. And so when everything was pulled out and put in front of the researchers, they could see exactly when it happened, how it happened, and everything was coded. So it couldn't have been done after the fact or before the time when all the meetings occurred. So to me, it was pretty cool. He actually got... Sorry, go.
No, carry on.
I was just going to say that the other facts that he got were the family members of this James Houston guy. He's got his parents right. His dad was an alcoholic, and that came to light as well. Name of 2 siblings that was there as well, and a lot of details about where they lived all came out with this kid. And by that time, he was about 4 years old as they started to draw more information out of the child. So where it came from and the specifics of it is just way too strong to think it's something that just come into his head or he's watched it on a cartoon. And so to me, it was one of those cases where, it'd be lovely to speak to someone like that. But by the time they turn 8, 9 or 10, those memories are no longer relevant to them. They don't care about you asking about what happened when they were 2 and what were you doing when you were 2. They just don't care. So for me, it was one of those really cool cases. And it was called, he's actually James III, because James Houston, his previous incarnation was a James, and his dad was a James as well. And he always used to sign his pictures or his drawings James III. So just a lot of weird things with the case.
You would think it was more than what he's heard from his parents, or the TV.
To me, it can't be. And the whole thing about how the kid was suffering from it and suffering from, the nightmares and everything that he went through, it's all very genuine and powerful. And if the parents, let's say it's a parent's suggestion where that comes from, that's pretty poor parenting. That's pretty tragic. So,
and it's not just, just finishing, and then we'll go into questions because we've been on nearly 50 minutes. It's not just the average person. I was looking up famous people as well. People like Patton. He actually remembers several lives. So, and one of them, when he first started in World War I, his first assignment was to Langres. I apologise to any French people that I mispronounced that. General Patton, we're talking about. And a French soldier was going to take him around and show him around this town. He ended up taking the soldier around the town because he remembers being in the 10th Legion, Roman Legion. General Patton did. And that was and it turned out that this was a very ancient Roman town. And he actually took the French soldier on a tour, told him where the statues used to be for Mars and whatnot, and where the buildings were, where the Colosseum type thing was. He gave it all. And that wasn't the only one. So it's not just, people, there are famous people. Stevie Nicks. All right, she thought she was a monk in a past life. Who else? There was Sylvester
Tina Turner.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Hell yeah. Salvador Dali thought that he was a recreation of his brother. So, there's a lot of people that seem to have these memories. Yeah. And it couldn't have just, it's like Patton could not have just known the layout of a town that some of it isn't even there anymore, but is in the record. It's just how we know that, it's just really, really, yeah. I think we should go to some comments. What do you reckon? We haven't got much time left. We could talk about this all night. It's really quite fascinating. I actually only touched the surface of it as well. Okay, you can just read comments.
Yeah. I'm just going to say Tina Turner actually wrote a song about I Might Have Been Queen because she thought she was a pharaoh in 15 BC. Queen hat exception. So
now, for some reason, guys, I apologize if you had earlier comments. My comments are only going back so far. So if you had a comment and we don't answer it or a question, retype it, because I can only go back to about half an hour ago on this. So I'm just going through as well.
Yeah, because I'm looking. There's lots of chatting, guys.
I'm glad it's good that we're all chatting to each other because that's important as well. Subtitle is spiritually separate, land in the body. I'm just going through. Bear with us, guys. Craig just can't believe he said that. I think they're talking about your admiration for me there, Craig. That's paranormal.
Don't know what you're talking about.
In itself, isn't it? So
there's one or two comments about paranormal, guys. If you want to Facebook message us, then we can answer those ones for you.
All right, yeah, just for the paranormal. Unfortunately, we're talking about this subject tonight, but definitely. All right, so I'm right back to K. Michael, which we've already answered. Custard cream. My son has a friend called Bob, only he can see him. Yeah, that's another thing is kids seem to have these invisible friends, don't they? Actually, we should do that another night. That could be another subject.
There's so many.
And there's your son coming in, Tom. If we can recreate in the past, is there a way I can choose to avoid 2020? I think we all need to
yeah.
So
we've lost all the ones at the very beginning, unfortunately.
We have,
and I can't even get them on mine.
It's not even going to let us go back, and I'm on the main computer. This is my hosting, and I haven't got any questions. So I'm just going to quickly go through them.
Paula's just saying, as a child, she had a few strange instances described by her great granddad. She described her great granddad to her mum without even meeting him. Also told my family that we didn't really die. We just
do that.
Wait for men in the sky with the big red cross on his back to collect us. Ooh, that's interesting.
Sorry, like we're going trawling through all these. Come on, Craig, you should be trawling comments. Get one that.
Talk about?
I don't know. We're looking through the comments to see what before we wind it up.
What
about custard cream with her? Sorry, custard cream doesn't give away whether you're male or female.
I love the name, by the way.
I love it.
It's a great biscuit.
That kind of his 10-year-old son or her 10-year-old son told him that about the Titanic and details and stuff like that, and never really taken any interest in the Titanic. So, and when he was 7 years old.
It's amazing, isn't it, when people come out with information. Kat said, but she tells one of her friends that one of her dogs has never been here before and is very new to everything. So that's interesting, isn't it? Is that
if we missed your comment, I will go back and answer when I come off. We'll go through.
So
you always like to go through.
How do you know you've never been here before?
Oh, you're female custard cream. Favorite biscuit. So
love it. How do you know you've never been here before, though? How do you know?
Vanessa goes, so where can you get past life regression? There are hypnotherapists that kind of try and explore that, but I have been to a few because I'd love to explore it, and I haven't had anybody. So there's the challenge, guys. If anybody can get me under in hypnosis, then you are a better person than about half a dozen to a dozen other ones. I don't know. Have you ever been under hypnosis, Craig?
Never, but I do know a hypnotist.
You do?
Yep.
Oh, do you? Because I'd love to have a go.
And he does part of life regression as well.
Does he?
Maybe we should go.
Can we? Is he any good?
I don't know if he's any good or not. I've never done it with him. So
I'm happy to pay for all three of us to go and get
Abby.
To go and be hypnotized.
Yeah, shall we?
Can we
and then we can do a follow-up on this.
Live feed.
Oh, let's. Can we tape it? Oh, my goodness. Haunted Horizons does regression. Would he be happy to do it? I'm happy to pay it.
I'm sure he's happy to do it. I put words in his mouth, but he might turn around and say, I don't like Kag.
Oh, do it, Craig. Do it.
But what if you haven't had a past life, though? How do you know you've not had a past life? Is it because you rubbish everything? Because I can't get on a horse and learn. I can't ride it straight away. I can't. There's not many things I can do.
Maybe
so does that mean I'm new?
Maybe you're just so high up now, Kag, you're a cow, that you've got nowhere to go. You don't need to remember anything.
But don't you have to be good at something or be able to do something to surely have learned something?
You've made it to cow status.
You think so? I've made it to cow status. That's fine then, because I haven't got a clue what I'm...
What do you think, guys? Do you think that we should Craig should arrange for us to go and do past life regression and tape it and see what happens? Oh, come on, it'll be so much fun. Nothing else. Might find out what Cat's all about.
I'll do it.
Yeah, all right, I'm in.
Yay!
All right. Yay!
I might be an Egyptian princess after all.
I'm child now. Can't wait. I bet he can't get me under, though. I think I'm too much in control of myself. It's a lot.
Really?
I'd like to bet that Kag won't be able to be put under either, because she's a control freak as well.
I am a control freak.
And it's that losing control. You just, yeah. Everybody's going, they can't wait to watch this. It'll be great. It'll be so much fun. We'll let you know how we go, guys. So we'll get Craig to book us in. I'm happy to fund it.
I'm just going to answer this question here. What am I drawn to? Judy, what am I strongly drawn to? Nothing much in the slightest, to be truthful.
Oh, what you drawn to? Okay, so you've got no... Everybody seems drawn to something, Kag. Phil Collins was actually drawn to the Alamo. He was convinced that he was in the Alamo. Yeah.
I have got nothing. I'm not a collector of anything. I mean, I'm now into researching. That's because of what I do. I've never had one thing that I've actually stuck to.
Sorry, I'm just looking at Tom's comment.
What's he put now?
Was that Alison's way of calling Kag a cow on stream and getting away with it? It was a compliment. It was a compliment, Tom.
He put something else up as well earlier about being a cow.
So, field trip, investigation. Hi, Cams. Vape reviews. How are you? How are you? We're just about to come off now, though. Because it's time. Getting to that time. So, we could talk about this all night. Let's continue it. Let's get this past life regression going with hypnotherapy. All right, down the track. Let's do it as quickly as possible, Craig. Haunted Horizons outing. Craig, don't look all pained. All right, you offered that you would convince your friend to do it. I offered to pay, so let's do it, and then come back and continue with this conversation.
Are we going to put it on Patreon only?
No, well, we can do the video on Patreon. We can do an overall thing on here, but yeah, we could actually upload the video of us, as long as your friend's happy us recording it on Patreon, our subscribers. All the more reason to subscribe, guys. $7 a month, coming down as the American dollar goes up. I'll leave it to you lot to tell them what it's like. You'll have to watch, Cams. You'll have to watch the whole video next time. We didn't give much warning. My fault. I didn't advertise it too well, so we just come on and enjoy ourselves. And if people join us, that's fine. So I didn't actually. We nearly didn't come on, didn't we? So, all right. Well, I think we are going to sign off because I can hear my tea being cooked in the background there. It's now 8 o'clock in Australia in the evening. I haven't eaten yet. I've run out of coffee, Kag, in our lovely new Adelaide's Haunted Horizons mugs. Available from... Yes, Craig, you let it slide down. Available from Haunted Horizons. So, we're off.
Thank you, Damo.
Thank you, Damo, for that. Much appreciated. We love Damo. Damo helps us out with all the putting the stuff up, so that's brilliant. And Damo is brilliant as well. All Haunted Horizons people are brilliant, so come and join us. All right, with that, we're off. We are heading out. We're going to go and eat, and we will be back.
James from the UK.
Oh, really? Whereabouts in the UK? 11:37.
That's why your custard cream. I did wonder when you say your custard cream. I thought that's
custard cream, and I can talk like that. I am Yorkshire. Yeah.
The custard cream, love. Me dog. Custard cream, me dog. So good.
Actually, Geordie to start with, and then Yorkshire. So I'm just going to.
Yeah, Essex. Whereabouts in Essex, custard cream?
Here we go.
You got me going now. You're here from Essex, love. Get your stilettos out and start dancing around the love on dance floor.
We'll be here all night now. Yeah.
Clacton-on-Sea. Oh my gosh. I used to live in Billericay. Love Clacton. So good. Fantastic.
Craig's just going,
What
yeah.
the? Clacton-on-Sea. That's a great place to go to. Oh my gosh. Love Essex. Miss Essex.
I got down as far as Guildford. Lived outside of Guildford for a while, but then came down here. All right,
Yeah.
we're going. We are going. Well done.
We are.
Oh, going. Have a lovely night. Enjoy. Oh, for those from Clacton-on-Sea, have a lovely day. You've got the rest of the day ahead of you. I believe it's summer there while it's winter here. So. All right, we're going to go. Catch you later, guys.
Wear your mask.
Bye. Thanks for watching. See you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.